are going to be reading The Life and Times of Michael _ Beloved. Yay! Claps in the chat. By ImperialKatwala. I'm so sorry, ImperialKatwala, if you do look at this video. I am so sorry if I butchered your name. Not my intention at all. Fluffy fanfic. Okay. So, there aren't any trigger warnings in this as I know of yet. But I highly recommend you guys checking out ImperialKatwala's other works. They are just really well written, and you can tell that they've gotten better with their writing process as the chapters come out. So I really recommend you guys check them out. I will put a link in the description, as well as a general summary of the fanfic for the YouTube video. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Summary. Ranbu and Tubbo adopt a child. The first thing they do is make sure he isn't a zombie anymore, and the second thing they do is promise to keep him happy and safe forever. A slice of life AU where everyone gets along because Michael would be sad if they didn't. That summary alone will let you know this is complete fluff. Chapter 1. Dezombification. Okay, Ranbu said nervously, checking their pile of supplies one last time. I think we're ready. You've done this before, right? Tubbo asked, picking up one of the potions and swirling it around. Ranbu nodded. On villagers, yeah. I still don't know if this will work on a zombie piglin. Tubbo glanced over at the tiny piglin in the corner of the house, sitting passively in a boat far too still for comfort. It's worth a try. Yeah, it's worth a try. I've got the apple if you've got the potion. Tubbo nodded grimly. He made sure neither of them were in range, then splashed potion of weakness into Michael's boat. Ranbu gave it a moment to take hold, then grabbed a golden apple and a knife from the pile and stepped over to Michael. He knelt down, cut a slice out of the apple, and handed it to the piglin. Automatically, mechanically, Michael took the slice and began to gnaw on it. Ranbu kept feeding him slices of apple, even handing him the core once the rest of the fruit was gone. Then he put the knife away and stood up, wiping the juice off of his hands. Now we wait. Tubbo grabbed Ranbu's sleeve, tugged him over to the sofa, made him sit down, and laid down with his head on his platonic husband's lap. Ranbu chuckled quietly, running a hand through Tubbo's hair. Okay, this works. How long does the healing process usually take? It varies. Ranbu scratched gently around the bases of Tubbo's horns in a way he knew made Tubbo relax. Sometimes it just takes a few minutes. Sometimes it can take an hour. Magic is tricky. Tubbo let out a pleased hum. Well, I'm okay with waiting if we can just sit here the whole time. Just remember it might be different with Michael. Ranbu reminded him. This isn't a piglin cure. We don't know what it will do or how fast it'll go. Suddenly, Tubbo gasped and sat up a little. Ranbu, look! Red particles were drifting off of Michael, and he was starting to shake slightly. Textbook signs of a cure in progress. Ranbu couldn't help but grin. Well, it's working. That's a start. It's working, Tubbo breathed, staring wide-eyed at their soon-to-be son. Boo, it's working! Do we have enough stuff for him? Tubbo grabbed Ranbu's other hand, squeezing it tight, and turned to look up at him. There was some mixture of panic and excitement in his eyes, topped with the realization of this is really happening. Ranbu glanced at Michael, then nudged Tubbo to his feet. Let's go look, come on. We can look over his room and make sure everything's set for when the process finishes. Tubbo hesitated. But what about Michael? We need to be here when he wakes up. I don't want him to be alone. B, it'll be okay. Look, nothing's really changed about his appearance yet, right? After a moment of inspection, Tubbo slowly shook his head. I'm willing to bet that it'll take a lot longer than normal, Ranbu told him gently. We have time, Bee. Let's go make sure we're ready for him, okay? Okay. They were ready for him as it turned out. They had been planning for this for a while now, after all. They spent 20 minutes bickering about the location of the bed anyway, before Tubbo abruptly realized how long it had been and darted downstairs to check on Michael. Not much had happened. The particles were still there, and he was still shaking, so the process was still going, and there seemed to be a little less exposed bone on his limbs. But other than that, there wasn't much of a difference. I want it to be over, Tubbo admitted quietly. I want him to just be alive already, so we can take him upstairs and give him the sweaters we got and adopt him properly. Ranbu put an arm around his shoulders and guided him back to the couch. He searched for some sort of distraction and finally settled on, what do you want him to call you? What? Well, we can't both be Dad, Ranbu pointed out. Papa would probably be a good word. We can rock, paper, scissors for it. Tubbo laughed quietly. It will have more weight if Michael picks the names, I think. Yeah, Ranbu agreed. And suddenly, his chest felt like it was about to burst with how much he cared about the two people in this room. Michael wasn't even alive yet. How was it possible for Ranbu to care so much about him? Tubbo snuggled a little further into Ranbu's side and frowned thoughtfully. Do you think he'll be able to understand us? Or will he just speak Piglin? Honestly, probably Piglin. But we can teach him. It'll be fine, Ranbu assured him. Gonna teach him curse words first, Tubbo muttered, a mischievous glint in his eye. That startled a laugh out of Ranbu. Tubbo, no! He's like 3! Tubbo giggled. Tubbo, yes! He's gonna learn them anyway. You know how many people curse on this server? How dare you? I'm going to take our son to live with Bad Boy Halo. Tubbo's laughter tapered off, and he smiled up at Ranbu. Michael's gonna be our son. We have a son. We have the best son. The best son ever! Tubbo agreed happily. The conversation drifted for a while, both of them watching Michael and murmuring about whatever came to mind. It was really nice, and Ranbu relaxed into the calmness that he only really felt around Tubbo. Even when his husband was at his most chaotic, there was always an undercurrent of something that put Ranbu at ease. Tubbo was the one who got them food, just some steak and some berries on Ranbu's berry bushes. But as the hours wore on, Ranbu had to convince Tubbo to go to bed. I told you, I'm not going to bed until Michael's better, Tubbo huffed. What if he wakes up in the middle of the night? Then I'll come get you. Why do you get to stay up and watch him when I can't? B, I don't need as much sleep as you. You know that. I've told you that, Ranbu reminded him gently. Tubbo folded his arms and pouted. It's still not fair. Ranbu hesitated, then offered. You can sleep on the couch if you want. That way I can wake you up immediately if something happens. And if I get tired, we can swap out. Tubbo thought for a moment, then poked Ranbu in the chest. You promise to wake me up if anything changes? I promise. Fine. Tubbo disappeared upstairs for a minute, then came back down with a pillow and a blanket and curled up on the couch. Ranbu blew out the lanterns and settled in for the night of waiting. Time was liquid in those hours. The particles were hypnotizing to watch, and Ranbu knew he probably lost hours just watching them drift off of Michael. Once he was certain Tubbo was asleep, he scooted closer to the boat and began murmuring in the language of Endermen, something he didn't remember how he knew. He told Michael that he was doing really well, and that this could take a while, and that was okay. That he was sorry if it hurt. He told him about Tubbo, and Snowchester, and Tommy, and Techno, and Phil. There was something very comforting about sharing such a private part of himself with a child he and Tubbo had claimed as their own. Eventually, Ranbu blinked out of another particle watching period and realized that it had gotten lighter outside. It took another hour or so for the visibility in the room to come back, and as soon as it did, Ranbu immediately began looking Michael over. The cure was definitely doing something. His eye was glazed over, and there was something behind it. Now, rather than the empty nothingness of a zombie's gaze, the green patches of skin were almost entirely gone, and most of the major holes in his body had healed up. Admittedly, his skull was still visible, and he was still missing an eye and an ear, but that was fine, hopefully. Tubbo mumbled something into the couch cushions, then sat up, bleary-eyed. His hair was a rat's nest, and Ranbu had to stifle a laugh. It's morning? Yeah, come look, there's some progress. Blinking the sleep out of his eyes, Tubbo scrambled over to Ranbu, sitting down in front of the boat and examining their son. He's less green. Ranbu nodded happily. And less full of holes. Oh, Tubbo breathed, and that was a painful oh. There were bad memories behind that sound. Look. The unhealthy skin had healed without any visible marks, but the areas where bone had been exposed and some rather large patches of scar tissue over them. One on his arm, one on his leg, one on his ribs. Tubbo's hand went almost automatically to his face, running a finger along his own scar tissue. He's gonna think it's cool that you match him, Ranbu murmured, putting an arm around Tubbo and trying very hard to not sound like he was about to cry. We can make it normal for him. Tell him there are signs that you were really brave. He's not gonna grow up thinking it's weird or something he has to hide. No. Never, Tubbo sniffed. Perfectly normal. Ranbu nodded. Perfectly normal. Just like the fact that he's not human and speaks a different language. But I only know one language, Tubbo protested, brow furrowing in confusion. Ranbu cleared his throat, then quietly warbled. Hello. Tubbo gasped. You speak Enderman? Yeah, some, Ranbu admitted, switching back to human. It, tends to make people uncomfortable, so I, usually don't. Say more things, Tubbo demanded excitedly, leaning forward on his hands. Ranbu fought down a flustered warble by clearing his throat again. What do you want me to say? What's my name in Enderman? Ranbu thought for a moment, then hesitantly said, Clever Mischief Maker. And what's yours? Forgetful Half-Ender, Ranbu told him more confidently. Tubbo leaned against the side of Michael's boat, grinning. What about Michael? Ranbu hummed thoughtfully. I don't think I can give him an Ender name yet. They're usually based on, personality, so kids don't really have names. They're just sort of called kids. Oh, cool. Can you just say things? Anything, really. I just think you sound really cool. Yeah, sure, I guess. Ranbu paused, trying to think of something to say, then began telling the first story he thought of. Once, there was a half-ender and a mischief maker. They went to the place of fire, and as they traveled, they found a piglet child. Tubbo listened, starry-eyed, as Ranbu retold the story of finding Michael and bringing him home. He finished at the present, with sitting next to a boat on the floor and waiting for the cure to finish. That was awesome, Tubbo told him, and there was a weight to the words that he said. He was being completely sincere. Ranbu blushed and pulled his knees up to his chest. It wasn't anything special, really, just us finding Michael. Aww. An embarrassed warble rumbled in Ranbu's throat. He buried his face in his knees. Tubbo scooted over and rested his head on Ranbu's shoulder. You're gonna be a good dad. So are you. Ranbu didn't care if his voice was muffled. He needed to say it. What time is it? Ranbu glanced up at the window. Getting to mid-morning, I think. Tubbo nodded decisively and stood up. I'm going to make us breakfast. You keep watching Michael. They had a lazy morning, eating breakfast and talking and watching over their son. It was relaxing, and Ranbu almost managed to shake off the nerves of becoming a parent soon. Then the particles dissipated, and Michael slumped to the bottom of the boat. Tubbo lurched forward with a gasp, and Ranbu was right behind him. With slightly shaking hands, Tubbo scooped up their son and pulled him out of the boat. The patch of visible skull was smaller, but it was still there, and the cure hadn't replaced his eye or his ear. Ranbu realized with a sinking heart that he would be without them forever. He was also breathing and curled against Tubbo's chest like a normal child. Tubbo looked up at Ranbu with tears in his eyes. Boo, he's alive. It worked, Ranbu agreed softly, full of too many emotions to name, reaching out and running a gentle hand over the fur on top of Michael's head. Later, when Michael woke up, they would give him a warm sweater to ward off the chill of Snowchester, give him some food, and try to get him settled in as best as they could. But for now, they just sat there on the floor, a little family of 3 for the first time. Woo! Yeah, that was chapter 1, you guys. That was really good. Build an empire of sound as the sun